I'm excited to see you in the sequel, The Talented George Santos, which is... So you thought, I guess, after Elizabeth actually was completed, but before it was released and recognized, you weren't so confident that it was going to be well received, or that you were going to be well received. I had read that there was some skepticism.
Well, it was at that time when that sort of there was no such thing as a Bollywood West hybrid. I mean, if any of you have seen RRR, you know, there's a lot of breakout films. And if any of you have been to India, you know, the filmmaking, the way they string narratives together is so entirely different to how we are traditionally used to in the West. And it felt like it was such a strange endeavor. At the beginning of the process, Shekhar Kapoor handed me a book with uncut pages from, I don't know, 1750, basically saying the sayings of Queen Elizabeth I. And so I think he left me to sort of deal with any historical accuracy that the film had. But I just felt like it was an act of hubris that Glenda Jackson and Judi Dench had played Queen Elizabeth. Flora Robson, who was I? A little girl from the colonies. So, but yes, so I think I was quite shocked at that it was so well received in Venice and then here in the States.
So there's that. There's Talented Mr. Ripley, and then there's the first of a number of these hiatuses that you've taken. Is hiatus the plural, or I think so. over the years, where you go back to theater, and I think you did that for a beat there after Mr. Ripley, I believe.
Yeah, but we did a play I did a play on the West End. But yeah, it's never been an either-or situation. I think I've been really fortunate to move between two mediums, because working in a proscenium arch gives you a very strong sense of a frame. And so I found really quite early in my career that I understood better, more deeply, what to do in a wide shot. That's why it's always good now that they've got monitors on set all the time, is you just go up and check the frame, and so you think, okay, if I move a bit more to the left, I just innately know it will mean something different, and that's from just having that visceral understanding of the proscenium arch frame. So it's been a really, and then also to understand how to be really intimate with an audience in a very big theatre, because you're used to the close-ups, so...
Really interesting, yeah. So you come back from that, and there is this run of The Shipping News, Charlotte Gray, Bandits, and then, of course, the Lord of the Rings trilogy for Peter Jackson. How long were you in New Zealand for that part? And did you realize in the making of it, which I imagine, that this would be something sort of unlike anything we'd seen up to that point?
Someone at that point, I still had an agency in Australia, and someone in the agency in Australia said, "You don't want to go to New Zealand and play an elf." And I said, "It's Peter Jackson." And I said, because now we all go, of course, but at that, he was brain dead and Meet the Feebles and all that stuff. And I was such a huge fan of his, and I said, I absolutely do. So I was there for 21 days. Not enough.
And the rest of them were, what was it, like 9 months or something, right?
No, I think they were there for 2 years.
2 years, because they were back to back.
Yeah, immigration finally had to get them out.
And it was... I guess it was a good enough experience that you wanted to come back for The Hobbit years later, right?
Oh, no, I stalked Peter about the other one. I did say to him that I wanted to play... There was a series where he was going to play a dwarf, and it was behind a table, and I said, well, look, you'll pan past the banquet table, and there'll be you, and can I sit there and be your dwarf wife? And so, but I couldn't... It would have taken too long to put the facial hair on, and I was doing something else, so I didn't get to do it. But yeah, it was an incredible family atmosphere, and it was, everyone sort of takes it for granted what a risk it was. The books were so beloved, and I don't think any of us, and I was a small part of it, but I don't think not even Peter and Fran and Philippa could have predicted, Weta couldn't have predicted what an enormous thing it would do, culturally, but for the GDP of New Zealand.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Then there's Veronica Guerin, The Missing, and the two films that we'll show clips of next. But just to set it up, first of all, Martin Scorsese's The Aviator. You are playing Katharine Hepburn, and who was still alive at the time you were cast.
No, actually, well, yes, but then when I got on the plane to go and film, I was just waiting in the lounge, and I picked up a paper, and she had passed away that day. I know, it's very considerate of her, right? No, but it was terribly, it just felt like some sort of omen. And I mean, it's always an incredible responsibility when you, or a daunting prospect. I mean, Anna de Armas has it with playing Munro, you know, anyone who takes, you know, that on. And when Michelle did it as well, you know, I think that it's a huge responsibility playing someone who's so iconically known in the medium that you're presenting them. I think that's the challenge.
Is it, I mean, it's got to be also, was it an immediate yes just because it's Scorsese, or do you have to say to yourself, okay, I'm a blonde Australian being asked to play a, whatever you would describe her accent as, brunette American,
there are such things as wigs, so that
okay, all right.
I wasn't worried about that so much.
I would think it's an intimidating assignment, though.
Well, no, but I mean, of course, I mean, I was doing The Missing, so I was riding out with Marlborough men every day. You know, my first child was learning to walk in the snow outside Santa Fe, and it was one of the happiest times of my life, actually, working with Ron Howard and Tommy Lee Jones. It was a really, I don't think a lot of people saw the film, but it was a really remarkable experience. And then I was told by my agent Hilda that Scorsese wanted to call, and I just had to sit down and I braced myself, and I knew I was going to say yes to whatever he was going to ask me. I thought he was going to ask me to sort of come to some charity event or something. And he asked me to play Hepburn, and I went, yeah. Of course. But I did. I got the knee sweats. And actually, I did have a bit of a panic attack. Actually, we were living in London at the time, and we were out. I don't know, we were out with our little ones, and all of a sudden, I'd never had a panic attack before. My field of vision went like this, and I just said to my husband, "I've got to go home." And I think it was
Really?
I was so daunted by it. But Marty's so great. He got there. And he said, "You don't have to look like her." He said, "You look great blonde. You know, she should have been a blonde." And so, and what he's doing is he's liberating you right there from having to do any sort of looky-likey version. And the great thing he does is that he screens, doesn't just hand you links to, but he screens films. And I was thinking, why is he, I was screening all these screwball comedies, and I realised the very, very first entrance that my character had, he wanted the character's energy to blow Howard Hughes' socks off. So he was asking me to approach the character with the energy that those films had. So he was directing without directing, which is great directing, right?
Absolutely, and Oscar #1. So that was.
It's
great.
all about that.
No, well, I mean. It's exciting. The other one that we'll look at in the next set of clips is Notes on a Scandal, which I imagine sometimes when you take on a role, it's because of the director, like Scorsese. Sometimes maybe is it the people you'll be acting opposite, in this case, Judi Dench.
And Bill Nye.
And Bill Nye, who's going to be a...
If you haven't seen Living,
yes,
he's incredible, really incredible.
In this case, just to remind folks, you're playing this teacher who has an inappropriate relationship with a student and then has this kind of older teacher who has a bit of an obsession with your character, played by Judi Dench. Is there anything that when you're with somebody like that who's been around forever and doing great work, do you just observe or do you ask questions? How do you learn from the great people you've worked with?
She is fantastic. She's so wicked. I mean, I remember she was telling me David Hare had written a wonderful, wonderful play. And of course, because it was wonderful, wonderful, at that particular point, London critics decided they didn't like him, so they gave him a bad review. And she did a cross-stitch cushion for him that said, "Fuck 'em, fuck 'em, fuck 'em." So that's Judy.
Yeah.
And we were about to do a close-up, and she was standing here doing this with both her hands. And I thought, she lost it, what's she doing? And I said, Judy, what are you doing? She said, oh, darling. She said, takes all the veins away from your hands. And so I'm about to put my hands to my face, and I don't want them to look the age I am. And so...
Valuable lessons.
She's
yes.
really, really great. But also we had our characters, because her character does get very obsessed with my character, as my character gets very obsessed with one of her students. So it's a very unhealthy human soup of a film. Written brilliantly by Patrick Marber, which is how I got into the film in the first place. And we have a sort of a violent episode where Judy was actually looking like a Ninja Turtle. She had to have this back brace on because I had to slam Judi Dench into a dresser full of crockery. And I said to Richard Eyre, the director, I said, I can do a lot of things, but I can't slam Judi Dench into a dresser. And she said, don't worry, darling, just go for it. She was fabulous. She was fabulous.
Well, let's take a look at Cate in The Aviator from 2004 and then Notes on a Scandal from 2006.